We're going to begin this series on writing interventions by discussing what makes writing so challenging for our students. So writing actually requires a student to use more skills simultaneously than any other task in school. So what are some of these skills? We're asking students to generate ideas, organize and plan, formulate the letters as they write, know how to spell and encode each of the words they want to put on the paper, while simultaneously understanding the syntax and sequence that those words should go into to make sense on the page. So these all together encompass writing. And that is why for so many of our students, it can be a great challenge. So think about the student who has speech needs and also struggles with executive functioning. That right there can make the idea generation component very difficult. Well, organization and planning can be difficult for a student with speech and language needs, fine motor, and executive functioning. The letter formulation will certainly be difficult for a student with fine motor skills that are handled through occupational therapy. Spelling can be a challenge if a student has speech needs and/or has a learning disability. And certainly the syntax is impacted for those of our students with speech and language needs. So when you think about your students and think about how we're going to teach them to become great writers, we often will need to really hone in on what is the skill we're trying to teach and what can we take off the table while we're trying to strengthen that one skill and build the capacity in a certain area. So if I'm focused on idea generation, it may not be crucial that the student is actually formulating the letters. So if there's a student who struggles with fine motor and receives OT, perhaps I want to take some of those elements off the table while trying to focus on some of the others. There is a lot more to writing than coming up with good ideas. Children with writing disabilities may have no trouble forming the content and having creative thoughts of what to write, but yet struggle endlessly to get those thoughts down on paper. Even when they have something to write or have written, they might not be satisfied that the words on the paper actually capture what they intended. I often hear my students say, I would have said more if it wasn't so challenging to get the ideas down. So, for children with writing disabilities, the graphomotor, grammatical, and structural aspects may require so much effort and concentration that even their best ideas never make it onto the paper. So what can we do to ensure that's not the case for our students? What strategies can we employ to ensure that what they truly have in their thoughts and their ideas get captured in their writing? So what we want to do is figure out what are the different neurodevelopmental functions required for writing so that we can approach each individually and also know when one may not be beneficial to a certain task so we can remove it. There are graphomotor needs, so using your muscles in your fingers and hands. It's important that you have these skills in order to form letters and maintain a real grip on your writing instrument and to keep writing pace with the flow of your ideas. So if you're a student who has difficulties with graphomotor, perhaps we can use a device which, now there's plenty of free apps where you can actually dictate your ideas and have it translated into print through the software. So Dragon, for example, is a great free app that you can put on your phone as a teacher, as a provider, or get on a device for a student so that we can remove that graphomotor variable as we're trying to really just capture their ideas. Certainly there's a time and a place to address strengthening the fine motor skills so that long term they can do writing with all the components together. But let's isolate some of the things that we want to teach and remove those elements that aren't necessary at the time. Attention is huge also in terms of being a successful writer. It's an important role in all stages of writing. Writers must preview what they want to convey, then put their ideas on paper while continually self-monitor to stay on track. Then there's the language demands. Language is an essential ingredient in writing. And so for those of our students who struggle with the different elements, form, content, and use of language, we're going to need to support them as writers. You need to recognize letter sounds, comprehend word and meaning, understand the order and grammar, describe and explain ideas. So certainly those of us who are speech pathologists know that we have sufficient tasks to focus on with the language of writing, that anytime we can remove some of those other tasks like attention or graphomotor needs, it allows us to put more of our students' energy into focusing on the language of writing. Remember that memory can also play a role in impacting the student's ability to write. Children have to retrieve the vocabulary and spelling that they want to write. They have to tap into prior knowledge about facts and concepts that they've learned during many essay writing tasks. Organize and sequence their ideas, which certainly ties into many of the language demands. So we just want to make sure that we're addressing each of these neurodevelopmental constructs, knowing that they're key variables and how to support them. A final neurodevelopmental construct is higher order cognition. So as our students get older, the writing assignments require more of these higher order cognitive functions. Students have to generate original and creative ideas while integrating spelling, grammar, and punctuation rules, applying critical thinking and concepts. So when you sit down to teach your student to write, really think about which of those neurodevelopmental constructs are key to the task at hand. Create accommodations and modifications to support those that you're trying to address, while coming up with ways to remove those constructs which aren't necessary for the task. In other modules, we'll go into more of the intervention strategies that you could use to do so.